I was in summer stock. See, in California, they don't have summer stock. But they're all in the eastern states, New York, and all the New England states. And I auditioned in New York for a company called the Metropolitan Players in Tiverton, Rhode Island. And Tiverton, Rhode Island, and we got $10 a week plus, this was in the ad, sandwich meat. $10 a week plus sandwich meat. So I went for it. So I went there, and then it closed. Opening night was a play called Broken Dishes, which nobody ever heard of except Bette Davis, because it was on Broadway and it starred Bette Davis when she was very young. So that's why, if you're taking notes, I'll go slowly with Sophia. Broken Dishes starred Bette Davis on Broadway. And then we would dress in the cellar, and you couldn't hear anyone walking over your head. No audience people came in. No audience ever came. So usually if you're in the cellar and you're putting on the make, you hear the walking on the wooden floors of the audience, even if it's 6 or 7 people. And the only one that came to opening night was Tuck, who owned Tuck's Clam House. I shouldn't plug like this. Tuck's Clam House, which was in Tiverton, Rhode Island. Oh, God. So anyway, what was good about it was it closed naturally because no one ever heard any footsteps upstairs. But we went, all of us kids, we were young, and I had my other legs, my other hair, my other teeth. There was no stopping me. What camera? Hello. And so then I went to Newport, Rhode Island, which was a famous theater, and they had famous stars, and I got a lot of parts, and I went there 2 summers. And it was fun, and that's how I started. I was young and beautiful, of course. Lidsville, I said the word without choking. Lidsville, as I was practicing, no. Lidsville was 35 years ago. It was 1971, I believe. And it seems like an hour and a half ago I was sweating there under that costume and the lights. But it was fun because what's wonderful is it's still here today. I am barely sitting here talking to you. But it's still here, and kids will enjoy it. The best compliment I ever got from Lidsville was in Sardis, which is my favorite place in the world on the East Coast. I've known the family for years. I was in Sardis, and it was the breaking up of a luncheon for 11, 12-year-old girl. She was in a dress to the grandparents, both sides of the family, and about 8 people. And it was about 4:45, and that was over, and I just came in to have a few drinks, and I drink the same drink because I'm a Capricorn since I was in the crib when I started. And that's a Manhattan on the rocks, no cherry, in a stem glass. The same order. Manhattan on the rocks in a stem glass, no cherry. And the little girl came over to my table, and she said, "Are you hoodoo?" Just from asking for a drink. Not using my phony hoodoo voice or my overacting ability of the early 70s. And that amazed me. Kids are very smart with these shows. You know what I'm saying? And they make a big impression, and it's a responsibility if you entertain children. You have to be careful. You know, it's amazing. I just was hoodoo. I mean, I didn't audition. How would you audition for hoodoo? I don't know. I was sort of like semi-famous. And and I guess they came to me like you'd go to, you know, Madonna, or you would go to Nicole Kidman. At that time in the beginning 70s, I was hot. So I guess they came to me to be hoodoo. And it was nice because Paramount, my father was an artist, truly. And he was the head of the outdoor advertising posters. He designed all the posters for Paramount Pictures in the 30s. And a man came to my father's studio in Paramount Pictures, in the Paramount Picture building in New York. And this was a nice man, and I do a play, and this is in the play. He would be played by Kevin Spacey. He had a little mustache. And he came to speak to my father, and he asked my father to go with him to California to be his partner, because my father, he said, did the finest, and he would come and look at my father's posters of Marlene Dietrich and Sylvia Sidney, and he said, you are the finest artist that I've encountered, and I'm going to move to California. I'd like you to come with me. And of course, my mother wouldn't go because she had family in the East. It's a long, boring story. The little man with the little mustache, his name was Walt Disney. So my father could have been Walt Disney's partner in about 1935. So that's what Paramount means to me. So that was part of it. I would be working at Paramount where my father worked. I think we shot it at Paramount, didn't we? Because I don't know. The last time I was in a studio, I guess it was Paramount. And we had dressing rooms, but you never got to the dressing room because you couldn't leave the stage. As soon as you walked, they push your face in with the makeup to keep all the stuff glued on your head and pull it so that it didn't buckle, whatever that word is. And it was exhausting, and by the end of the day, you couldn't feel your face, and you went home and you still felt like you had the rubber stuff glued on your face. And it was fun. It was sort of fun. You see, there was no air conditioning in those days because it made too much noise. I'll go slowly because I see some of the students are taking notes. It was too much noise, so they didn't have air conditioning except sometimes between scenes. And we were all in these heavy woolen costumes, and the kids and the little people who were so wonderful were in those styrofoam, rubberized. You could die there and you wouldn't even know it. And one of the little people was Herb Verichel. I've had so much dental work. Herb Verichel. What is it, prompter? Hervey Verichel? Someone get a nurse. No one knows this crew? 8, 9, 12, 14 people? Herb, he was on The Plane Boss.
Oh, Hervé Villachez.
Well, that's what I said. Herb, what?
Hervé.
Hervé Villachez. So he was one of the little people. They were all so talented. But they were so tiny, and they were in these styrofoam things, and you could die. But he used to come to work in this big Buick convertible that he had platforms and big extensions for the thing. And he had a cigar, and he came in like he was 6'12". I thought, good for you. He was adorable. So we worked very hard. It was very hot, and we skipped around and jumped. And I had the zapper, you know, which became so famous, like Milton Berle's cigar, Durante's nose. My zapper, they're still talking about it in the hall. Hear them now? Yeah. So anyway, you had to keep your hands like this before the cue came for the zapping. Because the slightest, if someone closed the door on the floor below, they'd go off. You see, the slightest thing, the zapping wasn't that good in those days. So if you had them and you just, wow, they would go off. And finally, somehow, luckily, sometimes you could hold on until it came the cue. Now, I don't think I did it. Someone else did it, the zapping. I don't remember. The whole period is so strange. But that was the zapping. You know, I used to be in these musicals on Broadway, and you would do 8 performances a week. And after the Monday night, you were tired. And you had the Wednesday matinee in the evening and the Saturday matinee. And you have to come out there and be adorable and just scream your ass off. Do you know what I'm saying? So they all hear it because they all paid a lot of money. And it's a big Broadway hit. And I guess I learned how to do that. That's how you do it. You have to do that if you're going to play Hoodoo. The Great. By the way, you can't just say Hoodoo. It's Hoodoo the Great. And that's what you have to do. I mean, you have to, that's how you have to play it. And it's hard with the heavy woolen suits and then the makeup, and the man constantly, his name was Hickman, he was a terrific makeup man, kept pushing the stuff on so the glue would hold. And you could go, I mind. Which is not what happens when you do Hamlet, you know, but the Great Hoodoo required great, you could go out of your mind. It was fun. But I had a dressing room next to Barbara Stanwyck, so that was good. But then I had to wait till like 9 o'clock at night to finally get to it. To save money, which is the right way to do it, you did all the scenes inside the hat. For all 15, 17, how many?
17.
For all 17 half hours, you did all the interior of the hat. And then you would do, 2 days later, the exterior of the hat. And then a couple of days later, you would do the flying in the hat. And the point of the matter is, you didn't know what the episode was about because you just did everything on the gray rug, and then you did everything on the black couch, and then you did everything on the coffee table. And you didn't know what anything was about. But they have to do it that way so they don't have to keep moving, you know, all through the thing. So they did all 17, is it? I finally got it. All 17 episodes, they would do all the scenes in the same place, and you didn't know what the story was about. And you had to try to catch up in the middle of the takes while the man is pushing your face back on because the heat is making it come unglued. Barbara Stanwyck never had that problem. Lucille Ball used to call me all the time to say how wonderful I was as Hoodoo, because she's a good friend. Only because I had the same color hair as she did. It was the same red. And she thought she was looking at a rerun of hers half the time, but I didn't say. She's very funny, Lucille Ball. I love Lucille Ball. She would come, I had a friend, Adriano, who had a restaurant up in Beverly Glen, a wonderful Italian restaurant, and he made the greatest mashed potatoes. And one of the things Lucille Ball loved was good mashed potatoes. So the phone would ring, I would pick it up like 3:30 in the afternoon, she says, "It's time." So I knew it's time for the mashed potatoes. So she and her husband would drive by my house, pick me up, and would go to Adriano's, and she would eat a bowl of mashed potatoes with a napkin over them. So the people wouldn't see that she's eating a bowl of mashed potatoes. And she said, "Ann Southern taught me how to do this." I had a good life. She was extraordinary, Miss Ball. Usually years, and when I did several children's shows, you have to speak very loud because then they have to hear it, that you have to get their attention. You see, and then the kids will listen. I did another children's show called Frankenstones. For you people who are applauding now, thank you. Frankenstones, Ruta Lee was my wife, and Pee Wee Herman was my son, and Zelda Rubinstein, that wonderful actress, was my daughter. And we would scream in this studio someplace because that would get the kids to listen. They would, if you screamed, to listen. When that girl in Sardi said, "Are you Hoodoo?" I thought, that's amazing that she could recognize my voice when I was just asking for a Manhattan with no cherry. And I thought, wow, that's nice. It's funny, isn't it? When I was a kid, I used to listen to Mayor Fiorello H. LaGuardia on the radio. He would read the comic strips, the comic strips, and those things. And Uncle Don, who got into trouble because he said a dirty word once when he thought the microphone was off, and that was the end of Uncle Don. Overnight. Uncle Don was gone, very famous show. You have to be careful. Hoodoo goes on. Put in applause. I'm going to be a lot of applause here. If I never see a green face again or red hair, it'll be fine. Hoodoo. I think we're going to watch the episode where I play my twin brother. So you get 2 hoodoos for the price of 1. Rather, the producers get 2 hoodoos for the price of 1. They'll tell you it's not important, acting on the stage, but I don't believe it. I think it is important. I think it's important to lift men's spirits above the average experience of their existence. And you're not going to get paid a lot of money. And then lots of times you're not going to have anything to eat. But you will get one thing in return, and that's a chance to act on a stage and say the things you want to say and do the things you want to do. And I think that's enough, says the great hoodoo.